I'm going to give two pieces of
Okay.
advice because I don't want to be naive. The first piece of advice is the best advice I've ever been given, and it was by a friend of mine that I spent in Iraq running missions with. Whenever I got back from Iraq and went to college, he started his own business. And as I had many business ideas, I'd call him up every once in a while. And the same advice he'd always give me is just get started. You have no idea all the problems that you have to solve, but and don't like get distracted by all these things, but just really get started on doing the business that you want to do, and along the way you're going to find problems and just solve those problems. But you hear Kevin, Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank always say like, "Oh, I'm going to take this out back and kill it." There are such things as bad business ideas. I've had plenty of bad business ideas before I came up with Ruffliners that I maybe just didn't get far along. That I tried this one product idea and the more market research I did, I just couldn't find that there was maybe it wasn't worth my time. I don't know. This might be a $300,000 company that I'd be maybe making less than I'm making as an engineer. I don't know if I want to spend all my time on that, right?
Right.
And so the analogy that I've heard from Alex Hormozy is like, if you had a hot dog stand and you were going to sell hot dogs, what is the advantage that you would want in the marketplace? And all these students are like, oh, I want the best price. I want the biggest hot dogs. I want the best quality. And it's like, no, you want to be right outside of a football stadium whenever it's letting out and there's nowhere else to eat and you have a starving crowd. So
Yep.
whenever you find a product, a service, a business that has a starving crowd, there will always be people that need patent service, right? So that's a starving crowd. I am the starving crowd. Whenever I need patent service,
Yep.
somebody like Dave is the person that I come to.
Welcome to another episode of Everything Intellectual Property. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has created a product that serves as the ideal dog hammock for trucks. Please help me welcome the CEO and the founder of Ruffliners, Brandon Himmel. How's it going, Brandon?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Glad to be here with you today.
No, absolutely. And kind of glad to have you on and really talk through your story. I guess one of the things that I always maybe kind of like to ask, at least at the beginning here, for those who may be watching on the podcast or the audio version and maybe not kind of have the video, can you maybe describe the product and what it is that you've created?
Yeah, so Ruffliners is a premium dog seat cover. We have a unique value add that we have patented door panel protection that attaches to the door panel, so it makes it more convenient to take your dog on more adventures. Other dog seat covers, they might cover the back seat area, but Ruffliners attaches to the door so that it completely covers the back seat area and the door panels, as well as we use, an overall premium design for a better product.
Yep, and I kind of pulled up here your guys' website just so audience can get an idea of kind of what it looks like inside the vehicle, which is pretty cool. So I'm not sure if you can see it, but no, hopefully the audience can kind of see that.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So yeah, again, this is definitely a pretty unique product, that's for sure. And I guess maybe kind of going back, did you, as you were kind of creating this thing, did you maybe try to use other kind of liners for trucks, and maybe they just didn't serve the product, the purpose, or kind of still was maybe not what you were looking for, or just something that you said, look, I'm going to just kind of create something all together with your rough liners to be able to cover not only the seats but also the door of the vehicle?
Yeah, so really, I mean, the idea for the product came about around in 2017. I got a new truck at the time, and I like getting outside with my dogs. We go hiking, we go camping to the mountains, all this stuff. I was living in California at the time, and I needed a way to completely cover the backseat area. And my dog, I would use other covers, but my dog likes to rest her head on the door panel and should just drool all over the doors. And so I could protect the back seat a little bit, but my vehicle was always getting just really dirty. And so I had in my mind a way. I was like, there has to be a way to have a cover that covers the whole back seat area and the door panels. And so I literally just went out and I had a couple moving blankets in my garage. I went and got a used sewing machine from a garage sale, and I just like made something. It was a pretty rough design. I can actually pull something up. I could show you real quick. Let me
No, and this is pretty good as you're pulling that up, because and I love to hear those type stories, because I think a lot of people they kind of are in a similar boat as it relates to they have an ideal to kind of solve a problem that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis or pretty often, and for whatever reason they just kind of keep that ideal in their head and don't kind of execute on that ideal. I love that you're saying, hey, I got started by kind of getting this sewing machine from a yard sale and taking some blankets and kind of trying to put something together to put in my truck to see, okay, does this thing kind of solve the problem that I'm kind of incurring day in and day out?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if I could share real
Yeah,
quick.
for sure. Can you share things on your side? I'm not sure if I have to give you permission or not.
Let me see. Share screen, entire screen. This one over here.
Okay, so let me see if I can. There you go.
Yeah, so this was like literally the first one that I made was just with some old moving blankets here. You could see like the stitch. I just have some like little straps here to kind of that I had went and bought. And then I went later, maybe like a year later. This was in
Uh,
2019. I found these on my Facebook recently. I was looking back at kind of like some of the early days. And this was, I went to a fabric store and I was like, oh, let me go like actually buy some waterproof fabric,
yeah.
kind of play around with the idea. I'm definitely not a seamstress, but I could see that there like it could kind of work, right? And then eventually, like this was like the beta version of the product.
Mm.
Once I reached out to some manufacturers, this was in like 2020 when I was still shipping products from my house. So
So
yeah,
did
that's
you
kind of how it all started.
so did you sew that the earlier versions yourself, or is that something that you kind of maybe got help with that?
So the rough designs that I was showing you, those just like I made those
Mm.
on my own with a sewing machine, kind of putting it together good enough to kind of protect my vehicle, and I actually use those. Like I use those for a while, until I was like, oh, I need to kind of, it's not working the right way. And originally I just took some plastic and bent some plastic and tried using some like of those metal snaps that you can attach to
Yep.
stuff to try to get it to them to snap in place. And I spent some time with different velcros like that have adhesive on the back, and realizing that those break up in the sun. So then I had to go learn how to what what
Mm.
what glue formula could I use to like make this all work so that I could use Velcro or something. So it was just a process. It was kind of something I just needed out of necessity to begin
Yep.
with. But I've always been an entrepreneur, and so I've tried to think of other products in the past, modular rock climbing walls. Hey, I'll rent out mountain bikes, this or that, and then this was something that just took a couple of years to kind of figure out how can actually make this, because it's a little bit different. I want to put a piece of plastic between the window seal and make it all part of the cover, make it where it opens and closes without too much fabric and it fits right and all that stuff. So it kind of just took a couple of years of slowly working on it and getting a little bit more ideas and
Yep.
to kind of get there. And then but then the better version, that was once I reached out to manufacturers on Alibaba, found one that I could work with. We kind of went back and forth
Mm.
and then went through some sample processes to kind of get something out there to just start selling something.
So it seems like you kind of it wasn't, man. This was a kind of iteration process that you had to iterate over and over again. It wasn't like, okay, I kind of had this ideal, and then the next month or the next couple months I have an actual product. This is something that you kind of tried and tested and reworked, and you put in somewhat a lot of effort into kind of getting a product that,
Yep.
okay, you kind of you felt proud of. I, I guess maybe the question at that point is, at what point did you say, okay, I want to sell these things? Because it's one thing to say, okay, I have a product that I can
Mhm.
use that kind of solves my problem, but it's another thing to say, okay, I want to start a business around this. And like you said, deal with manufacturing, deal with being having to market the product and all that entails, or that comes along with kind of having a business. So at what point did you say, okay, I have something that others will want, and therefore I want to start a business around
You know, I've always I've always felt inside of me that like I just want to have my own business.
it?
I went to school
Yeah.
after the Marine Corps. I went to school for physics. I got a specialty in optics. I specialized in like signal processing and how, I worked for a company for 10 years as an engineer, top 30 S&P 500 company you never heard of, called ASML. They make the
Is that the
machines
chip
that are
company?
Yeah, they make the machines that are used to make computer chips,
Yeah.
specifically the layers of the computer chip that limit how powerful we can make computer chips. So it's really on the cutting edge of semiconductor technology. And that was really interesting and it was challenging. But I always knew that I really need, like, I wouldn't be fulfilled in life unless I worked for myself. So for 10 years while I was an engineer, I would travel and I would read books about, I would read the lean startup, or I'd read, you know, traction, or like I'd read these other business books, like how to trying to figure out how can I launch a business. And sometimes being in a comfortable space in life, being an engineer, you're not always motivated to take that leap of faith.
For
And
sure.
And when you have these obligations of 40 hours a week, I got to go work, or I'm traveling a lot for work. So then I even have less time to put into like trying to start something up. It's kind of hard to do. But in 2019, if you've seen the Shark Tank episode, I talked about this. Both my parents passed away,
Yeah.
and it was a really hard time in life. And it really made me just think that like, if I want to do this, I got to do it. I got to like start make something happen. And so in that's why in 2020 I started reaching out to manufacturers and
Mm,
actually started taking like more initiative, getting things done.
yeah.
And then in 2020, what was it? In 2022, so I got the products in like 2021, 2022. I was selling. It took me about a year and a half to sell my first 200 units on Shopify. I had no idea how to sell anything.
Yeah.
I just had an idea for a product. I knew I wanted to sell it. I knew I wanted to sell it online and not at a farmer's market every day, spending my time there, but
For
trying to
sure.
figure out a vehicle that could actually grow this, right?
Yeah.
And so then I just, once I had the product and something to beta test, then it was taking a year and a half to figure out like, how do I sell things online? Sitting around watching YouTube channels and just obsessing about how does this process work? How do I optimize my listing? What kind of photos should I be taking? All these other things, right? And then in 2022, once I got on Amazon, I loved it. I just got so obsessed with the process. I really was thinking like, I want to do this full time. And
Mhm.
I'd listened to some Alex Hormozy content, and one of the things he talked about was just setting a bigger goal. Before I was thinking, oh, it'd be great to make $30,000 a year on the side, like selling a dog seat cover. Like that'd be, an extra like 30% bonus on top of my like 100K salary as an engineer, right? Like that'd be good extra money. And then I changed that to like, no, I just want to work for myself and
Mhm.
abundantly be able to like have a company that can provide and that can hire people and really like do what I know that I'm capable of doing. And so I just made a goal. And I literally, in 4th of July, 2022, went on a camping trip with a buddy, and we were sitting around talking about it. And he was like, bro, you should just do it. And
Sure.
so I literally just was like, I'm going to make a goal. And in a year from now, I'm quitting my job, and this is going to be my thing. And I'm going to like just make it work. And when I quit my job, I had like $60,000 in sales, but I knew it would work. Like I
Yeah.
could see if I stopped selling out of inventory and I got the right customer feedback, and I was like, this could maintain. And I was financially secure in a place where I could take that leap of faith and maybe not pay myself for 6 months or whatever, and like really dedicate to this. And
Yeah.
since I pulled that trigger, everything else has been history. Like the momentum that we've had and the growth that we've had, once I can dedicate my full time to this and just focus on it fully, I mean, it's been crazy like what's happened in the last couple of years. So yeah.
And again, I think that's a great story. So really one of kind of perseverance, it seems like. And I was going to ask you, how hard was that in real time? Because I was having a conversation with someone else the other day where, typically back 20, 30 years ago, entrepreneurship was looked at as something that you did when everything else failed. When you kind of couldn't get a job, or maybe wasn't good enough to go to the university, or whatever the case may be. And then you kind of fell back on entrepreneurship. But what
Yep.
I'm seeing more and more these days, even with the Shark Tank episodes, of you have professionals who are making good money. My background is engineering. Obviously, I went to law school as well and became a patent attorney. But you're seeing doctors, you're seeing dentists, you're seeing engineers who are making good salaries in their cushy professional jobs, saying, you know what, it's something else that's missing inside of me. Let me quit this to kind of start a business, sell this product, or provide this service. You're seeing that more and more, lately. So I guess I was going to ask you, how hard was it in real time to say I'm leaving this cushy 6-figure salary to kind of do something that may or may not work, or whatever the case may be? Because it's one thing if you're blowing it out the
Hmm.
water at that point in time, you were doing good and kind of bubbling, or progressing, but it wasn't like, okay, you were killing it at the time that you said, okay, I'm gonna quit my job and go into this thing full time. So I guess, how really tough was that?
There's something that Alex Hormozy talks about that I absolutely love, and basically he says like, you don't build confidence by shouting affirmations. You build confidence by having a stack of evidence that you are who you say you are. And so like for that year before I quit my job, I I I write down what I'm going to do every day. I put it in my planner and I check it off, and I don't go to sleep until it's done. So I know that I'm the person that tomorrow is going to wake up and do what he has to do to get everything done, to make sure that like this happens. And so I think it obviously took me 10 years of being an engineer and then having a major event in my life to then like buckle down and prove to myself like, you're capable of doing this and jumping into it and really doing it. But I think a lot of people around me were like, "Oh, you're crazy. You're gonna quit your job." Like, I don't know, other people sell dog seat covers. Like, still some people aren't really like that convinced about it, right? And to some people, they're like, "Oh, you just sell a dog seat cover." But to me, I can see the vision and I can see the growth we're having. And the reason why we had 4x growth last year is because I can see where we need to grow at. And the reason we're going to have more than 2x growth this year is because still I can see where we can grow and what the customers need. And I see the vision, you know what I mean? And I think an entrepreneur needs that. I think the change in landscape today that really makes it easier for people to go into entrepreneurship is the internet. Like
Yeah.
having the capability of launching a product on Amazon or on Shopify, having you could run your own like agency managing people's social media ads out of your home, having employees that are all over the world. The e-commerce has changed so much in the landscape of how much potential people have for freedom. And I think what most entrepreneurs want is the freedom. I work more now and I paid myself less last year than like I did as an engineer. Like it's not always about the pay. Like, yeah, the business is doing great, but that doesn't mean that I pay myself everything from the business
Right.
because I put most of that back into growing the business. I'm looking at long term, right? But it's just the whenever you it is hard to take that leap of faith. I tell people, if you don't know where to start, write down what you need to do, start doing that stuff, and then as you figure out along that process what else you need to do, add that to the list, and eventually you start figuring out like, oh, I I'm getting stuff done. Like you start building that momentum and you start building trust in yourself. Confidence is trusting yourself, and so you have to like build that trust in yourself, I think.
No, I agree with everything that you just said there. And I always say, like you said, the internet and e-commerce platforms has kind of lowered or took away the barrier to entry to become an
Mhm.
entrepreneur or kind of start a business where, maybe back in the day you had to get into the big box retailers, whether it was Target, Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart, to sell your product. Nowadays, you can kind of post it, like you said, on Shopify or on Amazon, and you can instantaneously have it, be purchased by anyone throughout the world.
See
I
if I
guess
can
you said,
focus here. Sorry.
oh, no worries, no worries. You had said something that was interesting that I kind of want to maybe get your thoughts on when you're saying, hey, some people they still think it's whatever is maybe not that great. You're selling dog covers. Do you think that those people are maybe, I don't want to say they're projecting their fears uh on you, but it seems like a lot of people, at least in my opinion, are not I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but they don't have that kind of whatever that you had to kind of take that leap of faith and say, okay, I'm going to do something for the freedom, or just kind of do something to kind of serve myself, as opposed to staying in this cushy job. So I guess, what do you make of people kind of projecting their fears on you in that way to say, hey man, you're only selling dog covers, or I wouldn't do that. If I were you, I'll stay in my job. What do you make of that, if anything?
Well, really, I mean, and I don't mean that in any way. Like, I don't really hear that from anybody. I mean, definitely, since we've blown up a little bit on social media, you get your fair share of comments. Like, this is nothing new. This has been around forever. They don't understand the differentiators. They don't understand the patents, or they don't see that maybe there's some knockoffs out there, and you might have seen it. Might have bought a copycat, but if you go back to their website now, they're not around anymore. Like, we've handled this. So I mean, it doesn't really exist that much, and I think most of those people that if they want to be negative, I think that that's more of a projection of their how they see the world. Um, there's this story, and I think it was from like Jay-Z, and he was talking about how like whenever he was going to be a rapper and stuff, he was talking to his uncle,
Yep.
and like his uncle just didn't get it, and he
Yep.
was kind of like, "No, this isn't going to work." And it's like, how am I going to expect somebody that has never achieved what I want to achieve to believe that that's even capable.
Right.
Like if they believe that was capable, they would have done it. It's just like it's a different vision. Mark Zuckerberg, when he's offered, $1 billion for Facebook, he's like, no, nobody can see the vision. I think you got to have a vision and you got to have that confidence. And the confidence just comes from doing a lot of hard things for a lot of time. I hate that my camera is like all like it does this every once in a while. I don't know why.
No, no, and again, that same Jay Z interview, I know exactly the one that you're talking about. It seemed like he did maybe, I think, also talk about the fact that his uncle seemed like he was just projecting his fears, or whatever you
Hmm.
want to call it, onto his nephew Jay Z at that point. With thankfully Jay Z didn't kind of let hinder him. Now you mentioned patents, and I would imagine it seems like kind of the more I do these interviews, when I'm kind of dealing with an engineer or technical person, physicist, or chemistry, biology, whatever the case may be, they have a little bit more experience in IP compared to somebody who may be working HR or kind of not have a professional degree at all, did you know about intellectual property or the importance of intellectual property? A lot of times when I'm doing these interviews, people are kind of thrown into the fire and have to learn this stuff on the go. Which, sometimes it turns out good. Sometimes they kind of, school of hard knocks with regards to IP. But did you know about IP, intellectual property, and the importance of patents and trademarks and all that stuff kind of beforehand?
To IP, I have a, I mean, I got a little bit lucky in a couple ways. One, my ex-father-in-law was a patent lawyer, worked for
Nice.
Perkins and Coie, one of the largest patent firms in the United States. He's done a lot of patents for iPhone, all these other things. I have another friend whenever I was in college, a neighbor of mine that is a patent lawyer, still
Nice.
a good friend of mine, and so he does more of the litigation side. My ex-father-in-law does more of the like writing of patents and stuff like that. So and then I have another friend of mine from college that I studied physics with that ended up going into the patent world as well. So I just happened to have a couple of people in my world that before this, sitting around talking about IP and stuff. And then whenever I came up with the idea and actually started selling it, my ex-father-in-law, we had a little bit of a discussion, and he was, like, yeah, maybe there's some stuff here to patent. Like, let's, he was kind of going into the retirement side of, working more remote, and it was around COVID at that time anyways. And so, I sent him over everything and explained like how my product's kind of different than everything else, and sent him over some PowerPoints. And yeah, I mean, luckily I had someone in my life that's a great patent lawyer that was willing to kind of help me out with writing these patents at the time, and came up with some really strong claims, and we articulated it in a way that we could, start off narrow, and that now we're working on broadening this with more continuations. And I have a new good patent lawyer that I work with now. So I think if I didn't have some patent lawyers sitting around me, I'm pretty confident that I wouldn't even approach patents. I think that my mindset at the time, how I remember it, is that like I didn't think that there was much to patent.
Yeah.
I was like, there's already something kind of like this, and then kind of something like this, but there was nothing like the already integrated door panel protection with the whole seat cover that attaches to the door panel with plastic pieces that go between the thing. There's some other similar products that attach to the doors in other ways, and it's like by just looking at what's already out there, I mean, and also like you don't know how much the cost is, what the whole process is. So having people close to me that I could just be like, and they're like, no, you should at least submit something. Like worst case scenario, you don't get anything, but like if there is something there, then you got it. So that kind of started it, and now I know a little bit more about patents, that now we're just continuing with more continuations and trying to figure out every way that we can broaden it even more, and
Yep.
and looking at how competitors are finding gray areas in our current patents and trying to continuation on with what we currently have to protect that. So yeah, I mean, I think I got a little bit lucky there. I think that it's for a lot of people that you could go down the business route of having something new. And I would say if you have something new and it's even just a little bit new, you should probably talk to a patent lawyer and see if there's like the patent and IP world is so interesting. There's so many little details of like how you can protect yourself, even, just copyright laws internationally, all these different areas of protecting yourself, that it's worth it to talk to somebody. And what I found is a lot of patent lawyers, or any lawyers actually, they're usually willing to take that first call for free, like that first 30-minute conversation you have just to see if there's any merit to this, whatever legally you're trying to get help with. They're usually willing to say whether they can help you or not, and if it's even worth your time usually.
No, and you're absolutely right about that. That's interesting. Lisa Lane, I interviewed early on in the week. She was another Shark Tank business with the Rinse and Root earlier on in season 16, and she talked about, she's a little older, but she talked about how her college roommate was a patent attorney as well. So that's interesting. That is almost kind of like 2 for 2 in that way this week, with kind of knowing maybe old roommates who kind of doubled as patent attorneys. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right with that. Patent attorneys typically will take that first call for free. Now, if you want that second or third call for free, it may be a little difficult to try to pull off. But that first call typically they will take for free. And IP, whether it's patents or trademarks or copyrights, it can be the saving grace. I know you talked about the knockoffs and having to kind of deal with that. And I would imagine that having IP, patents, and things like that was a big benefit of being able to kind of get stores or whatever on Amazon taken down, which probably wouldn't have been the case if you didn't have IP. And that's really kind of the whole reason for this channel, to be able to kind of enlighten and educate
Mhm.
the audience on IP. Because again, this stuff can serve as a saving grace for your company, to the extent that you can protect, some different features of the business, or like I said, it doesn't always have to be patents, but it can be a trademark, it can be a copyright, which is still can be as effective a lot of times when trying to take something down from the internet, or Amazon or Alibaba, or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
when you were taking down those kind of knockoffs, did the patents come up and kind of really helping out with that?
Yeah. So I have my first patent, which covers which was recently published, which covers the functionality of door panel protection attached to a cover. That was like the first patent we wrote, but we
Okay.
did the longer process of approval on that one. And then I did a continuation in part for like my best-selling product, which is the extra large floor cover that goes in trucks.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes all those claims and then adds on to them like some other functionality for the truck.
Yeah.
And so the second one actually got approved first. And so
Really?
that one I've had, like, because we did the fast track on that. I forgot what it's called.
Okay. Okay. I got you. I got you. I got you.
I forgot what it's called. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think Fast Track is the program where you can pay a little bit extra to have it kind of examined earlier.
yeah. I mean, it's only a few $1,000s. Like
Yeah, for sure, it's not
like
that
really
much.
isn't that much money, extra money, considering like that can cost you hundreds of thousands or more, like over the process of a year of somebody just stealing your design and
Yeah,
stealing all your sales.
and that's a great point, because I know a lot of time Amazon, they have the Apex program where you can take patents down, but you can't do that if you don't have an issued patent. So you have to actually have an issued patent to be able to take products down. So getting that fast track, or kind of getting in that
Mhm.
fast track program to get the patent issued faster, can save hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to
Yeah.
be able to kind of get those products taken down. Which I definitely agree
Yeah,
with that.
so I use that. So
Yeah.
my extra large floor cover, my bestseller, um, I think to date I've probably pulled down like at least 12, 13
Mhm.
competitors that are basically, using that claims within that patent. Um, the first 4 or 5, whenever it got published and I could actually submit the Apex package, it takes 3 to 4 weeks, and then it comes back. And none of them came back with anything, didn't even respond to it, because there's nothing they can say. Like, they just have to get pulled down. Like, they're not going to fight it. They're not going to pay the money to fight it through
Because
Amazon.
they're infringing. So like you said, they're
Yeah.
not going to pay the
And then
money to.
once that's approved, then it's like everyone else that pops up, I just submit it, and within 24, 48 hours, that listing is just pulled down, because they've already went through the approval process of looking at my patent and like clarifying like what are the claims here that differentiate it, and then like, so then it's pretty simple. So now my original patent took a little bit longer to publish. That one's finally published. And so now I'm going through the Apex process with some other competitors that are kind of in that area.
Yeah.
And then we have some more continuations that'll be published that are kind of in the evaluation process right now, because there's some gray areas of competitors that are kind of in a space that I need to broaden my claim a little bit
Yeah.
more to cover
Yeah.
them. And so that's in the approval process. So in the next few months, hopefully they're pulled down as well.
Nice, nice. So, and again, just to kind of explain for the audience what Brandon is talking about as relates to a continuation in parts. Typically, when you file a patent, you file it with a set of claims, and those claims may be narrow, or you kind of don't know what you're going to get with that first one, or you don't know, I should say, what the examiner is going to come back with in terms of prior art on to kind of reject your patent or your claims in your patent. But a lot of times when you get that art back, now you kind of have a better understanding of what's out there. And to the extent that first patent gets issued, because a lot of times you want something to get issued, or at least initially, you now know what's out there because you have the prior art in front of you. You can file continuation applications off that parent case or off that original patent to try to broaden up your claim set or your claim scope to kind of be able to go after kind of more people, or kind of make it difficult for people to copy your product. Now, the continuation in part that Brandon talked about is when you're so with a continuation application, you're not touching that patent at all outside of kind of writing broader claims. You're not adding subject matter to the patent. You're just rewriting the claim such that they're broader than that original parent case. However, with the continuation in part application, you're actually adding new subject matter to the patent that you may have done R&D, whatever the case may be, and going after that additional subject matter. So the continuation and part application, you're adding subject matter to the patent, whereas a continuation application, you're not adding any subject matter to the patent. You're just broadening up the original claims. So that's kind of the difference between continuation and continuation in part that Brandon is talking about. And again, it can be a powerful source. Like I said, a lot of times that original patent, you don't know what's out there, you don't know what the examiner is going to cite, but once you get all that prior art, now you kind of understand what's out there and maybe how you need to write the claims to hopefully broaden up your scope of protection and therefore prevent people from being able to kind of get within a space. So that's cool though. Just seems
you also don't know what people like. You create one product and somebody can literally make it like 99.9% the exact same, and just the way that you didn't see that there's like kind of this other way of achieving the exact same thing. And so like sometimes there's just gray areas within your patent that and so keeping those continuations open leaves you the availability to kind of like change the way you've written your patent. So if somebody comes up and just kind of sneaks around your patent in a way that it's like very much the same product, but the way that your patent is written, there is a little bit of a gray area, which can happen. There's no way to like perfectly write a patent that somebody can't find a little bit of a gray area. So that just like makes it where you can kind of defend against that. As long as you continuously have continuations, you can write another continuation. Right. So just trying to keep those open. You never know what's going to happen in the landscape. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yep. No, exactly. And essentially what Brandon is talking about is, when a patent issues, prosecution is closed, and therefore you cannot file a continuation. But as long as that patent, whether it's the parent case or whether it's one of the continuations, is still pending, you can, like you said, file additional continuation applications to go after subject matter that others may be such that you can kind of bring others. Others will be infringing at that point, because, like you said, you never know what somebody is going to try to do to get around one of your patents. But being able to kind of file an additional continuation to kind of write claims such that they're infringing your patent is a powerful tool, and people use it all the time to kind of continue to, like I said, kind of build their dominance in a space, and have a lot of different patents that are protecting a number of different features or variations of the product, which, like I said, just kind of makes it difficult for somebody to try to infringe without being on the hook for patent infringement. So yeah, it definitely seems like you guys are kind of using it in a perfect way, or the way it's meant to be used, to kind of really go after competitors and kind of continue to kind of build this moat around your product, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, the strong, like, there's a really good book I read by Peter Thiel called 0 to 1. And it's about innovation. He says innovation is the first ends. All in after one is globalization. So it's like when you have a new idea of something and you're doing something differently, and this can even just be, your differentiator, right? Like finding that space. You just, the strongest businesses are going to have a good differentiator. If you're selling the same thing that everybody else is selling, then you're probably going to have to compete on price or something else. Yeah. And so you just want to try to like be able to differentiate yourself.
For sure. No, you're absolutely right about that. So then I guess maybe kind of moving along from the patents, at what point did you say, okay, I need to take this thing on Shark Tank and really get this product out to the masses and kind of be able to take the business to the next level? Because I mean, I've had a lot of Shark Tank businesses around. It seems like it kind of runs the gamut in terms of somebody reaching out to Shark Tank over and over again before they actually get on a big stage, or maybe one of the Shark Tank producers reaching out to the business to say, hey, apply, and kind of more like a fast track program. And so I guess what was your experience to say, okay, I need to get on this show, and then maybe applying or being reached out to apply to the show to actually kind of get on the show?
So I was literally, it's actually a funny story. So I was sitting around, it was probably around Christmas time of 2023. And I'm at my sister's house watching TV with my niece. And I'm like, hey, let's watch the latest episode of Shark Tank. So while I'm sitting there watching Shark Tank with my niece that's in high school, she's like a junior in high school. She's like, Uncle Brandon, have you ever thought about going on Shark Tank? And I was like, because I love Shark Tank. I've watched like every episode. I don't watch a lot of TV, but that's kind of the kind of TV I can watch is anything about business. And so right there while I'm watching it, I look on their website and I'm like, oh, there's an open audition in Vegas on
Mm.
like in January 19th or something like that. I basically had like 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that. I forget exactly how long, but I had a few weeks to like basically prepare. Call up my buddy. I'm like, hey, you want to come to Vegas with me? I need somebody to hold like some like posters for me. And he's like, yeah, sure. And then I go online and I'm like, how do you even pitch? Like, I don't even know how to pitch a business. Like,
Mm.
how do I formulate all my ideas into a cohesive statement in a very short amount of time to sell myself, right? And so I look up the pitch format. I kind of take that, I answer all these questions in different ways, and then I take the next few weeks and I'm just feeding that into Chat GPT and all these different AI tools and getting lots of iterations of pitches until I kind of took the best versions of each one and got to the point where I felt comfortable with a pitch. And so yeah, a few weeks later went to Vegas. Um, Luckily we showed up early that morning, and so I was like the 50th person that auditioned for the year last year, like in early January. And The regular pitch went kind of okay, and then when I got into the numbers of, oh yeah, we've only been around a year, we did 1.25 million last year, and 1 million of that was just in the last quarter. We're like, then they kind of perked up and they were like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, there's some validity. Like, you have a product, but with sales really validates like if the market wants it, right? And so we made it through. I made it through to round two, and then there's videos you have to send in and all
Yeah.
these next processes of meeting with people and answering questions, and and they do background checks on you, and they look through all your social media, and you got to go through lots of process. So
Yeah.
yeah, I auditioned January of 2024. I And then eventually that led to, I I felt like we just kept making it through, and there's good. I have some compelling things, right? Like, I'm a veteran.
Yeah.
I have a product with some sales. I'm in a niche that applies to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, there there's a good amount of things around my story that I think like that I understood that there was a good chance that I could maybe get on Shark Tank. I feel comfortable talking to people and presenting, so as long as I put forth the effort, I feel like I always told them through the process. I'm like, if you put me on Shark Tank, I'm going to make a deal. Like I already knew that that's what was going to happen. Like, you just put me in the room and I'm going to make this happen, right? And
Sure.
so I didn't make the first filming block, and I moved out to Texas, and then they called me and they were like, "Hey, can you be out here?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not available one of the weeks," and they were able to squeeze me in the first week, and went out and filmed yeah, last year, and then finally aired. It's been a long process. It was like a 15-month process from beginning to end. But yeah, I mean, uh I think if you just if you really like put in the time auditioning, and I sat around with my brother-in-law and stuff every evening just asking cue card questions. So because when you get to the audition, you get to talk to them for like 3 to 5 minutes. This is a really good tip that I kind of was really prepared for. You're gonna have 3 to 5 minutes to talk to somebody. You really need to give a good 60-second pitch. So then now you have like another 2 to 4 minutes to talk to them. And when they ask you a question, don't waste your whole 2 minutes answering one question.
Yeah.
Like, have a really good answer in a quick amount of time so that
Mhm.
you can get through as many of these, because you don't know if it's that second or third one that's going to kind of pique their interest. And now it creates more of a story. So I think just being really prepared to answer all these questions really quickly, and like, be able to state the data. I could say I just had $1.25 million in sales last year. That has a little bit of an effect. But when I say,
Yes.
and 1 million of that was in the last quarter, I'm able to like paint a better picture to you for like the growth and everything. So a little bit of history with data analytics as well helps me like tell that story that I'm used to being able to, explain to people, momentum and things like that. So I think that helped out a little bit. But yeah, if anybody's interested, I would say spend a lot of time on Chat GPT. Just practice a lot of pitching until it becomes natural. But literally, the what I went and auditioned for on the pitch is almost verbatim what I pitched on Shark Tank. They like didn't take they there was like a couple places, one or two places that they were just like, oh, just say this, shorten this down in one place. I think there was like one sentence that they just cut off a couple words, but other than that, it was like the same thing. They were like, your pitch is good, just like keep the pitch, like you're doing it perfect. And so yeah.
No, and that's sweet. I guess one of the things, man, talking about Chat GPT and really being able to utilize that to your advantage. That's cool to hear that you were able to kind of really perfect your pitch using Chat GPT. And
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like kind of based on what you were saying with the earlier kind of auditions, it was a kind of similar, played out similarly on the show where it's like, okay, kind of you're pitching your product, and then when you say those numbers, at least the way they edited the show, you said all the sharks kind of start to perk up and say, okay, this is interesting. Now, I want to ask you, how was that feeling kind of just in real time to say, okay, I just started a product or just started a business selling a product. Next thing you know, within that kind of first full year, I did over $1 million in sales. It seems like that's nothing to sneeze at. I guess, how was it kind of going through it in real time? And did you know it was something special about it then, or would you just kind of still focus on the day to day to the point where you didn't really appreciate it as much as someone like, I mean, not saying you didn't appreciate it, but when somebody said,
Yeah.
hey, they just started business and they did over over $1 million in sales that first year, that's like, man, that's pretty impressive. So have you had maybe a chance to kind of look back at it and say, yeah, I did do something that was pretty special?
Um, I I have very ambitious goals, and in the business, I'm constantly like, we aim very big, and I don't want to hit my goals all the time because then we're not aiming big enough. Um, but I read somewhere or heard somewhere, and maybe I'm off here, but it sounds about accurate that like less than 4% of businesses will ever do less more than $1 million in a year. Like most businesses just don't ever do that. And so and until like up till Shark Tank, like I was just grinding, and like I was like, I need to be bigger. I need to like keep growing. I need to the Alex Hormozy, like, yeah, we did 1 million, but why didn't we do 10 million this year? Like, what's stopping us from growing even bigger? And then whenever after Shark Tank, I went to a conference in Vegas called Prosper Show, which is a big e-commerce conference, and there's tons of Amazon sellers there. It has Amazon, TikTok Shop, Walmart, all these things. You'd probably really enjoy it talking to people out there selling all kinds of products and stuff. But whenever I went there, I finally got out of my bubble, and I like started talking to other Amazon sellers and going to these events. And whenever I was sitting around talking to some of these people, I kind of, got the impression from people, they're like, wait, you're just like in 2024, you're just like coming out of nowhere with a brand new brand and going to $1 million, and you have no idea what you're doing. You're just like learning as you go. They're like, what? And so I think I'm pretty humble when it comes to Amazon because I think there's a lot of people out there that know a lot more than me. I think I got a really good product, and that's kind of made things a little bit easier along the way.
Yep.
Um, I'm surprised sometimes that I get amazing customer feedback from customers, and they're like, I've been waiting for somebody to make this product. Oh my God, like I needed this, you know what I mean? And so it's, uh, yeah, just the process has created everything that I've wanted, but it is amazing. I take a step back every once in a while. Our goal last year was 5 million. We hit like 4,950,000, and my account was shut down for a few days in December because of an address issue on Amazon side, or else we definitely would have hit that. We had a couple of account issues in Q4, and my head of operations is like, bro, we would have popped bottles at 5 million. I'm like, I pop bottles every day because I'm just like happy to live this life. Like I really am like just appreciative to that yesterday me put forth all the work that I get to wake up today and like just get to do the part of the process that I get to do today. But yeah, I am sometimes amazed, but I'm also like partially not surprised. I'm like, we aim big, we try to go big. But it is surprising to be like, hey, when you sit around and you think about like, how can I do 10x more? Then you do a lot more. So you just got to set really big goals, and it happens.
And you may have read this book saying 10x. I read this book, and that kind of changed the way I approach things. Grant Cardone had the 10x rule, and I read that book, and it was like essentially the premises of the book is, hey, and again, this is exactly what you've been talking about: is put massive action into something to 10x your goals. So if you thinking that you're going to do $1 million, 10x that to do $10 million, because it's going to cause you to put this massive action towards something. And even if you don't hit the 10 million, you're probably going to do a lot more than 1 million. So yeah, that 10x rule by Grant Cardone was something when I read maybe a number of years ago, it definitely kind of changed my kind of perspective on just a lot of different things, whatever it is that I'm trying to kind of do. And it's quantifiable. It's like, okay, if I was initially planning to do this, let's try to 10x that. That's going to force me to put this massive action in it. And therefore I'm going to be I'm going to do a lot more than what I initially expected or thought I was going to do. So, I definitely love that. And then in your case, the fact that you've been able to kind of build this thing, I think what you said, like based on having putting 15,000 into it it's kind of more, I want to say
well,
crazy.
They cut out a little bit. They cut it. So I talked to the Sharks for maybe 45 minutes or more, and they cut that down to 10 minutes. The 15K was what originally got me the beta version of the product. I love to be open with everybody, and so whenever I quit my job, leading up to quitting my job, I pulled out 50K from my 401K to put into it to have enough inventory, because I'm looking at the numbers and I'm like, this is going to take years to scale. I need to find capital now. I don't know how to find, business loans and things like that, but I got money sitting in my own, 401k and other investments. So let me take 50K out of my own investments and believe in myself. And, that was a big risk. And then even last year I sold my house, and, I put in over $100,000 into inventory last year, because I could either go take out debt, or I could just take the money that I already have invested. What am I going to do with this money? The best investment I have is my own business. And so I've put more into it. So I've definitely put the original 15K it was easy to put that in, easier, because that was a gift from my parents that I got from, them passing away. And so I wasn't expecting that money. And it was like, okay, let me do something with this money that's special. But then once you put that money in, it's like, I don't want to lose money. So I need to invest a little bit more money to actually make this like a realistic thing that's going to work. But another thing, back on that note about what you were saying from Grant Cardone, there's a really interesting podcast with Jeff Bezos recently. And I forget if it's the Chris Williamson, or I forget which podcast he was on, but he said, thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I like that.
And it really is. Like, you can, if you believe it, you can or you can't. You're right either way. It's the same thing, right? Like, if you aim to be a billionaire and you end up a little bit short, you at least know that you put in the effort that was worth $1 billion. You know what I mean? And then you got to hold yourself accountable and be like, do you really want this, or are you just waking up in the morning and saying things with no action, right? But I do like that saying of thinking small is self-fulfilling prophecy, for sure.
No, and again, even going back to, like you said, having to put in $50,000 or $100,000, man, again, the best investment ultimately, and this is another kind of underlying theme of kind of this podcast and what I do, is the best investment is going to be in yourself. That's kind of just what it kind of boils down to. And typically, if you're going out and getting investors, again, you've been on Shark Tank and was able to kind of do something with Robert. It's like, hey, man, people are investing in you as much as they're investing in a product. So the product can be good, but I think Charlie Munger said it before one of the interviews prior to his passing. It's like, hey, man, if you are a not so good person, I don't care if you got the best product, you probably don't want to do business with that person. But if you got a person who's willing to get up, work hard, have a positive attitude, and kind of get stuff done, that's going to go a long way, because ultimately people, when they invest in your business or whatever the case may be, they're just as much invested in you as a person. So I always say, man, the best investment is going to be in yourself. So the fact that you're able to take the $15,000 from, unfortunate passing of your parents, and $50,000 from the 401k, $100,000 from the house, and kind of put it into the business, it's like, okay, again, going back to what you were saying before, man, at the end of the day, you got one kind of go around at this thing called life. And at the end when I'm on my deathbed, I'm not going to say, man, I wish I didn't do that, or I wish I did. I didn't do that. They're going to be glad that you did that said thing, whether it was successful or not. So, and it seems like you've definitely taken that approach, which has been good. I guess let me ask you this, because I know business is not like a linear progression, although kind of hearing your story is almost like it's just been kind of on an up and up.
There's definitely down points. There's definitely was that kind of your question?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what was, because again, like you said, it is the ups and the downs of it. So maybe a two-part question. What was kind of the biggest breakthrough of the business that kind of got you to the point where it's like, okay, we got something here? Then on the flip side, what was the biggest challenge? I know a lot of people are going through, kind of dealing with tariffs, having to go through kind of, okay, manufacturing and all that. What was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome with the business up until this point? So what was maybe the biggest breakthrough that kind of really got you into that kind of next stratosphere, so to speak? But then on the flip side, what was the biggest challenge that you in a business had to overcome up until this point in time?
Probably one of the biggest breakthroughs was early on, finding there was a YouTube channel I had found about kind of how to do things on Amazon. I ended up working with them for an agency, and just originally, I was thinking small. And when I hired them to just do my listing optimization on Amazon, as part of that listing optimization, they went through all this research. They kind of showed me what my category was doing. When they sent me over a spreadsheet, and I'm looking at, there's people in my category that are doing $1 million in sales this month. I'm like, wait a minute. That's like, there's people selling dog seat covers, and they're selling like $1 million just of this one dog seat cover in a month. I was like, nah, there's no way that my product isn't like at least like top 30 in this category. So if I'm just like one of these top 30 products, I'm like, dang, that's some like once I could see, you don't always see, like, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but once you know where you're going and you can see something, then you can reverse engineer. Well, okay, then I need to spend a lot more money on ads. I need it. Like it gave me perspective. It gave me a little bit of a scale, just opening up that box and really, that kind of really opened up a lot more understanding of what was happening on Amazon, gave me a full approach of like how I need to do my title and all my listing to optimize for click-through rate and all this stuff. And so that was one of the kind of the big breakthroughs, is like I didn't really understand how big it was, you know what I mean? Like what the potential was there. And probably like as far as biggest challenges, one of the I would say one of the biggest challenges even to this day is that like a lot of the growth in the business comes down to me and like the amount of attention to detail and how much passion I bring into the business. And so even if you have an agency that runs your Amazon and they're supposed to be doing, I have a new agency that's amazing and they're really a smaller group and it's veteran owned. They're really like attention to
Nice.
detail. They're like, they go hard with what they do, but I understand my product and my customer better than anybody else in the world. And so like you can't just hire everything away. And even if somebody can do it 80%, you got to come in and take that 80% and make it 100% so that you're
Mm,
getting better conversion rate and so that customers understand the product better. I mean, everything from like we sit down every month and we look at all of our product quality stuff and we look at like every negative review and we put that into tracking sheets and we really look at like how can we improve the product, what do customers not understand about the listing that might be dealing with like a lower conversion rate. Like
mm,
there was a question, they cut this out on Shark Tank, but there was a question. Barbara was actually about to go out at one point before she made her offer, because I was talking about how I'm going to release new products and she was like, oh, engineers, y'all think, y'all sometimes like want to release all these products and it could be expensive and stuff because you don't know which products are going to sell. I'm like, I take a really analytical approach to it.
yeah.
I look at how many cars sold last year, all these other things. And she was like, well, sometimes y'all are, yeah, like that approach, the engineering approach is just looking for big ideas. And I'm like, no, I'm the kind of person that does all the boring work. It
Yep.
takes a lot of boring work to become rich. I was just earlier sitting here answering comments on social media. Like when people ask on TikTok, like I know I have a VA that does this, a virtual assistant that
Yep. Yep. I have one.
does
Yep.
all this. But in the after hours, I'm sitting here answering customer emails and answering messages on
Yep.
social media and, looking through the reviews. And I, it's a challenge, but at the same time, like that's where the opportunity is. When you find a challenge, then you find a lot of opportunity in the marketplace.
No, and I agree with that. Yeah, I was actually at the cigar bar last night having a cigar and just kind of going through, my kind of YouTube channel and answering every comment that just had over the last 2 or 3 days popped up. Just because, like you said, that stuff makes a difference. Man, it's interesting what you were saying about barber, because it seems like on one end sometimes the sharks will say, "Hey, just kind of focus on this one thing," but then which it seems like what Barber was saying, but on the other side, sometimes they're like going out as a result of maybe it only being one product as opposed to a product line, kind of with multiple products. So again, I guess ultimately I'm saying all that to say that, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, and it's not like it's this kind of one size fits all model that's kind of going to take you to where you're trying to get to, whether or not you kind of start off with a number of products or just one product. And obviously, the Sharks are great business people; they've been massively successful. But they're not always right, or they don't always really. They kind of disagree with each other from time to time, which kind of lets you know that it's kind of more than one way to go about things and kind of become successful, which is what I take away a lot of the times from watching a show.
Yeah, and I think that's helped me so much prepare. That's why I was so confident that I knew I was going to get a deal. I've watched so many episodes. Even my whole negotiation, like I had all of that planned. Like, what is the next step? What is the next step? Like, there's a progression. You got to be able to progress through your negotiations and things like that. And so, I've watched so much Shark Tanks that I understand like every little thing that they nitpick apart. And I'm sitting there on my couch like, oh, these people like they don't get it. Like, why are they trying to like franchise when they don't even have the one thing? And then the Sharks are saying the same thing. I feel like I've learned a lot from
Yeah,
just
for sure.
watching the show has helped me build a successful business and see where they're giving a lot of entrepreneurs feedback. And so, I got some of that feedback. You give a little bit of a pitch, they start asking you some questions, and they maybe need to ask a little bit follow-on questions to see if this is really a problem here. And you know, definitely Lori came with some hard questions. Mark came with some hard questions. They all had some questions. I felt like I was prepared to answer it every question truthfully, like honestly, with where I really think the vision of the company is going to go. But in the end, I think all the sharks really supported like what my vision for the company is. Even me and Robert have spoke, since we filmed and everything, and my whole plan and my vision and like where I want to take the company is just he's in full support of that, and he really
Nice.
just sees that like I really have a vision of where I want to drive this company and how that's going to work and what kind of brand we want to create and how we really support just. I sell a dog seat cover, but what I really sell is getting outside with your dog more.
Yep.
And so, like, we really want to be a dog company that helps dog owners. We sell a premium product, but at the end of the day, we put dogs first. We put our customer first. And so, we're just going to provide the products that our customer wants. And we're going to try to really stay focused on our niche and not get distracted with all these other objects out there of trying to chase a million different products and try to focus on dog car seat covers. And so, I think all of that stemmed from watching Shark Tank a lot. And so I think, going on there with knowing all the knowledge that I knew from watching Shark Tank, I think it just prepared me to be able to answer their questions. And I, I, I had a good understanding of where they're coming from. I think if you went on Shark Tank and you hadn't seen a lot of Shark Tanks, you might get thrown out of left field. But we even went for months, and I would sit down, and whenever I was watching the show, I'd be watching a lot leading up, for months. And every once in a while, whenever I'd see a good question, I'd write it down and I'd think about like, how would I answer that question? Because sometimes your initial response doesn't explain it in a way that you articulated your idea very well. And so sometimes you just got to think about these ideas a little bit to make sure you articulate them the right way, especially when you're on Shark Tank and it's like it's worth a lot of money and there's a lot of opportunity presented to itself.
Yep.
Make sure you do it right.
No, for sure. No, I definitely agree with that. 100%. So I mean, I just have two more questions for you, and just kind
Okay.
of want to be respectful of your time. I guess number one, and the first one is kind of more so maybe directed towards the audience as it relates to what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? Kind of you talked about your journey and kind of the ups and downs of it. Being able to be successful early on, and to maybe an aspiring entrepreneur who's kind of maybe doing this double dutch. Do I get all? I have a product, I have an idea, or I have a service that I kind of want to start a business around. Do I kind of go for it? Do I not go for it? What advice would you give to that aspiring entrepreneur or that person?
I'm going to give two pieces of
Okay.
advice because I don't want to be naive. The first piece of advice is the best advice I've ever been given, and it was by a friend of mine that I spent in Iraq running missions with. Whenever I got back from Iraq and went to college, he started his own business. And as I had many business ideas, I'd call him up every once in a while. And the same advice he'd always give me is just get started. You have no idea all the problems that you have to solve, but and don't like get distracted by all these things, but just really get started on doing the business that you want to do. And along the way, you're going to find problems and just solve those problems. But you hear Kevin, Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank always say like, "Oh, I'm going to take this out back and kill it." There are such things as bad business ideas. I've had plenty of bad business ideas before I came up with Ruffliners that I maybe just didn't get far along. That I tried this one product idea, and the more market research I did, I just couldn't find that there was maybe it wasn't worth my time. I don't know. This might be a $300,000 company that I'd be maybe making less than I'm making as an engineer. I don't know if I want to spend all my time on that, right?
Right.
And so the analogy that I've heard from Alex Hormozy is like, if you had a hot dog stand and you were going to sell hot dogs, what is the advantage that you would want in the marketplace? And all these students are like, "Oh, I want the best price. I want the biggest hot dogs. I want the best quality." And it's like, no, you want to be right outside of a football stadium whenever it's letting out and there's nowhere else to eat and you have a starving crowd.
Yeah.
So whenever you find a product, a service, a business that has a starving crowd, there will always be people that need patent service, right? So that's a starving crowd. I am the starving crowd. Whenever I need patent service,
Yep.
somebody like Dave is the person that I come to. So find an area where there's a starving crowd and then just get started. Like, you never know write down what you know you need to do, even if it seems like I don't know how to go. When I first started, I didn't know how to go from like, I have sold 200 units in the last year to now I spent 130,000 last month in ads. You know what I mean? Just for the amount of growth that I don't know. You don't know how to go from 0 to 100 real quick, but just write down what you know you need to do and just do those things one at a time. So that's a couple of pieces of advice. And then what was the other question? Or did you not ask it yet?
No, yeah, that was that. And then I guess the last and final question, and maybe the most important question of this whole interview, is how can people follow you? How can people follow Ruffliners, and how can people purchase the product?
Okay. Yeah. Find it. You can go to our website at ruffliners.com. We're also available on Amazon, and you can find us on Walmart. If you're looking internationally, then go to our website at ruffliners.com. You can follow us on all the socials. We're at Ruffliners on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We just started a YouTube channel. We got a lot of really entertaining content. We're not going to just show you dog seat covers. We're going to show you some good entertainment. Um, and yeah, and then if you want to follow me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. Name is Brandon Himmel, Himmel. And yeah, I love engaging with everybody out there. I found you, Dave, because I just looked up Ruffliners after airing on Shark Tank. I found your video on YouTube, and I watched the whole thing and commented, and you commented right back to me, and so here we are. I love engaging with everybody on the
Yeah,
internet. So
absolutely. And like you were saying before, man, just that engagement, it kind of really goes a long way, kind of with, just kind of building a brand and building a business. Yeah, man, these interviews are kind of very helpful, not only for the audience. I actually had someone reach out to me. It seemed like they watched a Shark Tank video, and I actually came out with an ebook. So they kind of purchased the ebook and like, hey, let's set up a call. I'm trying to protect and kind of monetize my product. So it was like, okay, that's cool. Just being able to have an impact in that way. But again, just hearing these stories and kind of, actually being able to talk to, people such as yourself. Obviously, I help them out. Also from a patent attorney perspective, a lot of times those are kind of maybe bigger companies, but just kind of seeing somebody at the ground level kind of build something, man, it's inspirational and something that I won't take for granted. And it's kind of made me do things that I kind of wanted, probably wouldn't have done beforehand, whether it's like come out with a book or kind of protect trademarks or things like that, for myself. So these
yeah,
interviews of kind of talking to people and kind of hearing your story and kind of seeing what you have kind of done from literally nothing, man. That's that big time. So again, thank you for just kind of giving me some of your time here this afternoon and kind of telling through your story, which again, like I said, is an amazing story and an inspirational one in the audience. Hopefully you guys had the pens and papers out, because Brandon, he definitely talked he gave a lot of jewels and some nuggets. And again, as he talked about in terms of the advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, just do it and kind of solve things as they come up. I think that's fabulous advice to kind of leave out on. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this interview, and we'll catch you next time.
yeah. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you having me on today. I think we had some really interesting conversations. I hope your audience got a little bit of value out of it.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. And I'm sure they definitely will get a lot of value out of this one for sure.
Great.
All right. Take care, audience. We'll see you next time.